Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of the last IT podcast in the world, where we talk about IT, business, leadership, anything we want to. And we've got a first ever panel format for today. I'm super excited about it. We've got some IT thought leaders that have all sort of been a part of my past, and we're going to talk about what it is that we really value in IT staff. What are the attributes that make up great IT staff? And we're going to pick these smart leaders' brains on what that is. We'll get to that in just a minute, but let me introduce our panel. First, we've got Tejal Patel. Hello, Tejal.
Hello.
Tejal is a director of ERP and business systems, so she's on the business system side of things. We've also got Keven Pennock. Hello, Keven.
Hello there.
Keven with the Best Background Award if you're on audio only. He's got a terrific background. Go to YouTube and check it out. Keven is a director of application development and a seasoned leader. And of course, our usual, Darrick Johnson, application architect and developer and overall IT deep thinker. Welcome to the panel, everybody.
Thanks.
All right. So we're going to get into that topic, and I can't wait for it. Again, talking about what are the things that we really love in great IT staff. Can't wait to hear your ideas. We haven't rehearsed it. We're just going to be pretty organic about it. But before that, we always banter on the podcast, and I have an unrehearsed question for the group, and we're going to go in this order: Tejal, Keven, Darrick, then me. And here's the question: what was your first job defined by? You received an actual paycheck, like with deducted tax from like a payroll system. So not babysitter or dog walker or, some of those things. But what was your first job, Tejal?
So I worked at my parents' motel when I was younger, but some of that was unpaid, so I don't consider it my first job. I was paid eventually, but not always. My first job was at McDonald's. I lasted a whole 2 weeks. Didn't love it. And then my dad, the manager at his motel, left, and I was like, hey, I can help you again. And so I went back to
all right, McDonald's. We've got a McDonald's alumna.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Good. Great. Keven, how about you?
My first job was a dishwasher for a Mexican restaurant.
And did you last longer than 2 weeks?
And then I moved into being a cook after that.
Of course, that is the career path in the restaurant biz.
Yes, it very much is.
Maybe sometimes prep cook between actual cook and dishwasher.
Yes, actually.
Did you last longer than 2 weeks?
I did. I worked there for quite some time, actually, a number of years, pretty much throughout my whole entire high school career.
So better stick-to-itiveness than maybe our guest Tejal over there.
A little bit, yeah. I made it a little bit longer than she did, yes.
Darrick, how about you?
So I had some gig work, but that doesn't count, of some farming activities, baling hay for a neighbor. But with the 1099 stuff thrown out, it was IT support at my college part-time, working the help desk, restocking printer cartridges, supporting freshmen with laptops that didn't know how to use them. So
great. Yeah. Perfect right in the IT space. My first job, I was what was called a library aide. I was 16. I was a library aide at the United States Air Force Academy Library, which is 5 miles as the crow flies from where I grew up. And I was just an hourly worker. And what I did was I reshelved books and I checked out books to cadets at the library. Cool. All right. Well, hey, first job's very interesting and great banter segment. And we'll be right back after this brief interlude to talk about what are the skills we love in great IT staff right after this. All right, welcome back to the last IT podcast in the world, and we are going to talk with this illustrious panel of Tejal, Keven, Darrick, and myself, IT thought leaders all, about a lot of experience either working alongside lots of IT staff or hiring them and firing them or whatever the case may be. But we are putting our brains together today to say, what are the best attributes we love in IT staff, non-technical? So not they were the best coder, great at this particular language or great at this particular technology or this particular system, but the other stuff, whatever that is. And it can be technology adjacent. So we haven't rehearsed it. We're just going to go round robin and talk about it. And so, Tejal, when you think about what makes some of the people you've worked with in the past, or if you were hiring someone, what's one of the things on your list that really makes a great IT staff member?
Something I always look for is that the person I'm hiring or is in that position loves what they do. I think if you love what you do, you naturally want to excel at it and do your best, and you're more engaged in what you're doing. Have you have stake in the success of the team and the company if you love what you do. If you're just doing
Yeah.
it as a job, you tend to be there just 8 to 5. You don't want to put in the extra time and effort. It shows, I think, in your quality of work if you love what you do.
Sure. Great point. Any questions or feedback for Tejal on that? I've got
Yeah, I'm
some.
curious. How do you how would you define that someone? How do you know that they love what they do? What are some of the signs of that kind of stuff from people?
Sure. I think excitement when you're talking about it. That's one of my interview questions. What do you love about what you do? And if they say, well, I'm really good at this, XYZ, like I can code really well. That's not what you love. Like, what do you love about, how do you get to that end goal of actually coming in every day and being excited for what you're doing? I've been in jobs where I don't love it, and it shows in your work, right? You just want to get out of there. You don't want to spend extra hours. But if you love it and you love the people you're working with, you definitely will go above and beyond. Like, you'll do the weekends if you have to, and then late nights, and you don't complain about it, because I think when people talk about something they love, you can just hear it in their voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great point. And by the way, I'm the Keven Bacon on this podcast. I'm the thread that runs through all of you. You haven't all worked together, but I've worked with all of you, so I've got all these experiences. But Tejal, you and I have been on several sort of crucial go lives together. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where what you're mentioning really shows up, because there's a commitment that rides along with it. And you kind of alluded to that. It's a tough go live. We're working extra hours. Something goes wrong. I think what you're talking about, this love of their job, really manifests itself in those moments where it's a little bit rough, but they kind of want to do a good job. It rides along with that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Very good. Excellent. Love it. Keven, over to you. What's on your list?
Yeah, so one of the first ones on my list that I really like, working in the technology and like the operations or application development or anything like that, is kind of the perseverance from people, or tenacity, I think is kind of the word they use, right? And for me, it's always, we've talked a little bit about troubleshooting in the past on things, various things, and you have to have that perseverance and that person who's willing to dig into all those things. So when there's something on the line, maybe a system's down or something like that, or even when you're trying to code and you're trying to develop a new feature that the business has requested for, you got to have that person that's willing to dig to the far ends of the earth to find that solution or keep going. Even when the going gets tough, you got to be able to keep going through that and persevere to be able to get through and come up with that solution, or find the solution to the problem with a lot of pressure, different things like that. So, I always like those people who can persevere through those times.
Yeah. That's adjacent to one of mine, but I'm going to hold off on what it is right now. Any questions or feedback to Keven on that?
Same as you asked. How do you find that, without lots of time with a person?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one to kind of find in people, right? You can ask some questions and do those different things, but it's really, you don't always necessarily find that until you're in the fire with someone, right? And then you can find that they're willing to continue to work on those things and give it their all and push forward and kind of find those things. I mean, I think if you can ask some questions to kind of determine if a person's curious, I think, or, can kind of stand through, or find ways that they've held on to things and made sure that they've followed through on things. There's some stuff there, but it is a tough one to actually find some, a way to determine that, like in an interview or anything like that.
Yeah. And we don't always know if the things that we're talking about on this particular podcast are even visible at the interview, but we know we love it when we do strike that kind of gold. Keven, when you were saying that, I really agree with this. Because when I look at all of you, you're some of the most persevering people I know. And you're also some of the best I've ever worked with. So totally agree. Would you kind of alluded to this, but I think quality rides sidecar with perseverance. Does that make sense the way I said that to you? Like doing a really good job?
Yeah, because I think I agree with that, because there can be there can be someone who's very tenacious and can persevere, but they can also create havoc on the way through as well, right? So like, just because somebody perseveres through stuff, they can make really bad code, or they can be pushing all the buttons as they go through trying to solve it. So you still have to have that quality, right? So still being able to write quality code, or, go through and troubleshoot without, hey, what is this button doing? Just pushing it, right? And understanding what's kind of going through that. But yeah, I would agree that quality has to be a part of that as well, very significantly.
Excellent. Perseverance. I love how sort of like character traity we're all already into, which of course that's sort of the point of the podcast versus the harder skills. Excellent. All right, DJ Darrick Johnson, architect, developer, and overall IT deep thinker. What's the first on your list?
So I was trying to think of the right word for this, and what I came up with was grounded, because we work in so much intangible stuff in software, especially in software development, but I think in a lot of IT, finding people that can explain technical concepts without jargon, people that will know the latest and greatest technology, but maybe not buy into hype, and people that can think through how their process works in the real world. How it affects users, how your application works in the wild, and what it's really doing, not just get excited about what some code you wrote, or a great new technology that maybe isn't a great fit for you. So yeah, people that are grounded, I think, are really valuable.
Right. That's a really good point too. I know exactly what you're talking about. It didn't make the cut, but innovation, which, ideas we'll talk about. Someone might have that on their list. I don't know, but it's great to be innovative or really think of new ideas, but they must always be grounded. Like number one, is this something the company needs right now? If we've got, a backlog of 12 things we need to do, and you've got a flying cars suggestion, for, hey, I read the latest article on AI and I think we ought to introduce it to our company, versus like, what if we fixed a couple bugs? You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Sort of, it can't be too pie in the sky, but you don't want nothing either. You don't want people who are status quo people, if that makes sense.
Right.
Does that make sense to what you're saying, or clarify for me?
Yeah, I think for me, that's what you want. Like I said, you want people that innovate, that look for new technology, and we live in a very ephemeral industry, right? Where it's hard to be grounded and focus on how things really work.
Yeah. Could we summarize that? And I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that like a grounded innovator? Is that two words we could put together, or is that too limiting for what you're looking for?
No, I like that, because I think as others I've thought of, you need those qualifiers, right? Because there is a boundary in a lot of these traits. I think loves your work probably isn't one that you want bounded too much, but a lot of these can be a problem in excess.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Anything else for Darrick? All right.
No, I like that one.
You go ahead.
When you said grounded, I was kind of curious where you were going with that. But I like how you've actually used the word grounded for that, because, I guess another word I kind of think about when I hear that too, the way you've described it, is kind of that realistic realist or whatever kind of thing, right? Is because I've worked with a lot of people who are very, their head are always in the clouds. They got great ideas. They've got all these, they're going in a million different directions, but none of it's valuable to what you're doing at the business right at that time, right? And so I think there's places for those people, right? I think, sometimes when you move, maybe it's a consulting world. I've seen a lot of them go into the consulting world, right? Where they can go in and help companies think of new ideas and kind of come up with things. But, sometimes when you're just working in a business and you need to get things done, it's hard for those folks to kind of fit into that when they've got all these, like you, David said, right? Create a flying car, when really all you need is a mobile app that can check someone in or do something, right? It's
right.
like, we don't need all this crazy stuff. And I've worked with a lot of developers who are like that. And it can be really challenging when they just have all these ideas and none of them pertain to what you're doing.
Tejal, how does all that apply in kind of the ERP and business system space? These guys on this side of my screen are all in the developer land, but how does that same concept apply in your world?
Kind of similar, because I do work with a lot of developers too, and we have them where they're thinking about, like, we're trying to solve a problem here. They're trying to solve a problem 10 steps above us, and we're like, wait, come back, please. It definitely applies in similar situations. Like, you're just trying to solve, how do you process an order? they're trying to process it, try and get to what happens 10 steps down the road.
Perfect. When I've been in meetings where all that's going on, where like there's a mismatch between I often, some of you may have heard me say this, like I'd say, what problem are we trying to solve here? And that's a little bit of a grounding statement, if I can borrow that. Like, let's get back to what we're trying to do, as opposed to, and then we could, and that'd be great. And I just thought it's probably a poor metaphor, but it's the only one I have in my head, so it's going to come out of my mouth. You don't want Eeyore, who's like, well, I guess it can never get better than this, right? But you also don't want Tigger, who's bouncing off the walls and out of control with the ideas. If you could put Eeyore and Tigger in a blender, which is a very terrible metaphor. Don't let your kids listen to this. If you could get the best of those, if you could have a grounded Tigger, you might be okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
One of my notes when I was thinking of it was healthy pessimism. And I think that's ended up liking grounded better. But yeah, there's the pessimism that knows things can go wrong, that builds in, builds in error handling, builds in logging because things will break, builds in remediation to their stuff, but also so pessimistic that you never do anything. You always say no to release isn't where you want to be either.
Yeah. Great stuff. Okay. Over to me. I think it's my turn. So I've got two, and I just flipped them in order. I'm going to save my best for last. So I'm going to go with this one because it kind of ties in with what Keven said. I wrote down, they are a voracious reader. They read lots of stuff. And by that, I mean, as you all know, I mean, technology has never changed faster. Between release notes or just even the news feed about what's coming out in the next version of whatever system you're on, or let's say trying to explore a feature, if you go over to the business systems or ERP space, there's always things in an ERP that you're not using yet, but you could, but you don't know what they are. And problems come up, and you need people who are reading basically documentation on what is this feature? What does it do? How do you configure it? How do you test it? Along with kind of the sort of here's what's coming reading. It's both. It's like the very operational, like how do I learn more about this thing I'm responsible for and build my knowledge about it? But you can't, YouTube is great. Yeah, I suppose AI is going to come and answer all of our questions, but currently, even if you ask AI a question, you have to read what it says. And so like really taking in spongy information as a person who's really staying on top of things and knowing what these gigantic platforms are that we're all on and what their capabilities are, I think takes someone who spends a lot of time willing to read and take in information. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, I agree with that a lot.
Don't nod on a podcast, please. I'm begging you.
Yes.
For the listeners, they're all nodding in complete enthusiastic agreement with what David just said. What do you think? Have you guys read a lot? Do you find you're reading all the time on stuff, or you did back when you were not, bossing everybody else around?
Yeah, I felt like, especially when I moved into leadership, I actually enjoyed reading a lot of leadership books and stuff. But when I was thinking about that, because I was a little curious on that one for you, like, I'm thinking sitting down and reading book after book after book. But really what I read a lot, I just read a lot of internet news feeds, right?
Me too.
And so I'll stumble across what's new in ChatGPT or what's new in this realm, or hey, this is coming out with these, and outside of technology, right? My son and I are kind of into cars, so I like to watch a lot of things on cars and things like that. And so, like you say, I think it's just a matter of that you're not just sitting and staring at, maybe a TV show or something, right? But it's something that's always kind of engaging you. You're learning something new about it. So for me, yeah, there's always something popping up on my news feed about the latest Apple, the latest, Android, the latest technology, or the latest of these kind of things. And so I always feel like I'm digging into looking at those kind of things.
Yeah, that's very much leadership reading, like with what's coming. And I agree with you. That's a very important part. In the just more operational IT staff, they're reading about the system they're responsible for. What are the release notes?
Yep.
A lot of these cloud platforms are coming out with releases 2 to 4 times a year with new features just popping up like this. Just staying on top of that is even like on one system or 2 systems is quite a bit of reading as well. What do you think, Tejal, Darrick? What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely agree. I'm always reading about the system that we're on and what's coming, how is it going to affect the current configuration that we have, right? There's new things popping up every day. How are people using a certain part of the system? Could we use it like they do to make our pain points be met, things like that. There's always a lot of reading.
Yeah. And I've got a couple more quick points to make on this one. I think this is a marker for continuous improvement too. These are people, if we go back to the perseverance, Keven, these are people that are diving into their work and really wanting to make things better. I think that's connected with the reading. It's not just reading for reading's sake, but there's a drive there to learn more and do things better. And obscure second metaphor, number 2, there's a scene in the movie Saving Private Ryan. They're talking about how to take out the tanks, and the major or the captain, played by Tom Hanks, says, well, we could use sticky bombs. And the soldiers look around at him and say, sticky bombs, sir? Are you making that up? And he says, it's in the field manual. And they go on to design these bombs, which are explosives stuffed into GI socks, coated with axle grease, which makes them sticky, and then they throw them at the tanks. The point of that story is the little phrase, he's a little surprised they didn't know it was in the field manual too. And that's because they didn't read it. And so I've always focused in on that little, the guy knew how to solve that problem in the middle of a very difficult situation because he'd read the manual backwards and forwards, if you will. So anyway, good. Well, hey, go ahead, Keven.
So I was going to say, I think, you said it ties to the perseverance there kind of too. I think it ties back to what Tejal said too, about if you love what you do, if you love what you do, you want to know more about it. So you're reading constantly about it. You're learning, you're doing those kind of things, because again, I've worked with people who say, I deal with technology all day long. I don't want to touch technology when I get home or outside of work or anything like that. So to me, that means a little bit of, you may not love what you do, right? It's, you're doing it for a job, because for me, I like to tinker with technology all the time. I'm playing with different, when you get Raspberry Pis, or, again, just learning about ChatGPT and playing with things like that. I feel like that's one of those things that, you love it if you're kind of playing with it all the time or wanting to continue to learn more about it.
Yeah, great point. Well, unless you don't have anything else to add, that is round 1 in the bag. We've got our 4 starter great points, love them all, and we're going to come back and do round 2 and then talk more about this after this short break. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the last IT podcast in the world with our esteemed panel of Tejal, Keven, Darrick, and myself, talking about the attributes that we think make a really great IT staff member. And we've got people kind of here from more the developer side of things. We've got the business or ERP system sides of things, but all smart people who've held leadership or have worked alongside some of the best and brightest. So we're going to keep going with what we really look for in attributes that make a great IT team and staff member. So continuing on in our pattern, it's over to you, Tejal, for your number 2.
My number 2 is self-awareness. So knowing you like it, I'm glad. So knowing what you're good at and what you're bad at. I think even knowing what you're bad at, you still set yourself up for success because you work harder in those areas. And obviously knowing what you're good at, you use those skills and, build up on them and make sure that you do succeed.
Yeah. So great point. I'm going to ask you sort of a challenge / opposite question. What would a non-self-aware person be like to work with or to lead as a member of your team? No names.
They think they're good at everything. It's hard to rein them in and make sure that they are following the right path. And if they do make a mistake, it's hard to get them to understand where they went wrong, because they just think that they know everything and that they are, their way is the right way.
Yeah. Any thoughts on self-awareness and what unself-awareness does?
Boy, I think that's a great one. I think we've all encountered those situations where people get in over their heads, don't know they're in over their heads. Or if people have been at the same place a long time and they kind of don't have outside voices to shape what they're doing, we've seen those code bases that hasn't had anybody else look at it in a long time, and they probably could use another set of eyes or other opinions.
Maybe 10 years back in their career before they hardened those patterns.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Keven, anything on that?
No, again, I think it's a great one. I hadn't even really thought of it or thought of that term or anything, but I think it's a good one because, yeah, the folks that aren't very self-aware, like you say, when you talk to the people who just think they know everything or didn't make the mistake or anything, or those kind of things, they are very difficult people to work with and to manage as a leader. It's very difficult because it's hard to have those conversations with them and try and explain to them that they don't know it all. They aren't the smartest person in the room, and that they do need to be able to take advice from other people, and that's really challenging. I've had a number of those kind of people, and they are very difficult to manage.
You set me up perfectly for my comment. I'm hearing in what Tejal said, and I'm getting to shoehorn a bunch of stuff was in my list that didn't make the cut, and I appreciate that about you guys. I think a self-aware person is also able to take feedback. To your point, Keven. Mm-hmm. And that's so critical to all of us, to growth, is to take leadership feedback, hopefully well delivered, constructively and in a good way. But I think those self-aware people can handle feedback, whereas the unself-aware people just kind of reject it outright. Does that make sense, Tejal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, in my career, there has been feedback that's been given to me, and I was aware enough to use it in a positive, constructive way to change how I was looking at something or doing something.
And to your point, generally self-aware people, when they receive the feedback, they already knew it was true. Yep, I can see that.
Yep.
I was wondering when you were going to tell me about that. All right, great one. Self-awareness, very, very solid. Good job. Hey, Keven, what's up next on your list?
Yeah, so I kind of blended mine actually last time when we've talked about it a little bit in a couple of the others, but it's kind of that inquisitiveness is the word I was looking. Curiosity was kind of the word that kept coming to me, but that just didn't seem like the right word. Curious is just somebody who kind of likes to look at things and stuff like that. But when I looked up inquisitiveness, it's like they want to continue to learn more and keep going through things. And right. So again, it kind of goes back to that reading, that loving what you're doing, those kind of things. But that inquisitiveness is, I find that as an example for like a developer, right? You've got to sometimes just kind of dig deep on your own. You got to learn things. You got to try. You got to experiment. You got to run things. You got to have no fear of breaking something, right? Usually, hopefully not in production, but, breaking the code and then being able to figure out how to resolve it and stuff like that. And so I've always seen that the people who are, just inquisitive to be able to do those things can do that. I always struggle with people who are fearful to open the code, right? Well, we need to troubleshoot this. Well, I don't want to open that. I might break something, right? It's like, well, I don't know how else you're going to figure this out if you can't just kind of dive in and start looking at these things. Or, and again, I want to, it goes back to quality, or there's still got to be some guardrails there, right? I don't want the person just going in and ripping every piece of code open or pushing every button just to see what happens. You've got to have the mentality to say, here's this button. I wonder what happens if I do that. Think it through before you do that, maybe even bounce it off of someone. But I've worked with a number of people who are they're fearful of picking up those kind of things or opening it up. And I think that really is a challenge for people because you really have to kind of push them. And again, when you get into those scenarios, like, maybe you have an outage or you have a crisis of some kind, those folks who can kind of dig in and do that really are the ones that really help in that situation the best, right? They're not afraid to go in there and just, roll up their sleeves and get work done.
Or as I say, let's click on something.
Exactly. And so, yeah, like I said, I've worked with a number of people who are, like in that support realm that are just afraid to do, click on something. And it's like, well, you're never going to learn unless you do it. And you may click on something and it may break it. And hopefully that's a quality. Then you learn not to do that again.
Tejal, Darrick, any feedback or questions or comments on that?
That's a great one. I had an experience shortly out of college working with someone from another geography that we were tasked to debug something together, and they were, we couldn't get it to work, and they wouldn't try something different that wasn't in the manual. It was like, and we know it's not working now. Let's try X. Well, it should work this way. I know, but it's not working. And so I think that's a great point to people that are inquisitive and willing to try stuff and willing to. We just had our manual reference, but willing to go beyond the manual sometimes and see what will happen. See what
for sure. Yep. Yeah, Tejal.
Yeah, sorry. I love that. Mine was actually curiosity, my third one. So I love inquisitiveness more. I think we always look for people that aren't fearful, right? To do something, to try and click things and break it and know how to fix it, or, obviously not in prod, like you said, but I'm always looking for those types of people. Those are the best employees. They're the ones that are very creative about how they get to a fix for something. And that's really who you want on your team.
Yeah, and mine that didn't make the cut either, but is adjacent. I called it a controlled experimenter. Very much kind of some things you said, Keven. Like you can go crazy in sandbox or dev. We don't care, but just don't do it in prod, right? That's a good example of like an out of control experiment. Say like, let's just click on stuff in prod. But like that balance, like you said, of inquisitiveness and trying stuff and clicking on stuff, but also knowing time and place and like not on Friday, for example, kind of stuff,
Right.
all that stuff. So really love, and I had that on my list too. Curiosity I had on my list, but it didn't make the cut. So you guys are filling in the gaps beautifully. We've all had similar experience. Anything else on this one for Keven, or any final thoughts from you, Keven?
No.
All right. Over to you, DJ.
All right. So I had another one that it definitely needs boundaries because it can be taken the wrong way. So I went with conscientious laziness. So we've worked with people that, and sort of the counterexample, we've worked with people that are they're very skilled, they're very hard workers, but they'll grind away at a very cumbersome process for years, and no one above them, around them, will know how cumbersome that process is because they just handle it. They're hard workers. What I think what has made people better in those roles are a little bit of that laziness of this process is hard, this is error prone. Let's find a better way to do this. Let's find a way to automate this. Let's find a way to not repeat this task. It needs that conscientious qualifier because laziness that's not conscientious just doesn't do a good job at it, just avoids that hard work. Conscientious laziness that makes it better, makes it less error prone, automates it, is really valuable.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but I'm going to hold off. What do you guys think about conscientious laziness?
Term I've never heard before. I know exactly what you're talking about, right? Because we all know those people who, will sit and run the spreadsheet, and copy and paste stuff for days on end when, maybe if they just spent, a little bit of time making it better and automate it, it would be better. But I like that because you're right. If you just say laziness, then it's a problem. But conscientious, where you're thinking about it, like, I'm going to be lazy about this, I need to make a better way to do it. I like that.
Like it's like you're making things better for yourself in the future, right? Because yes, you can do it the long way, but you're a little bit lazy in a good way. So that's why you're automating it, or whatever you may be doing in that situation.
Yeah. I'm going to see you and raise you, DJ. I'm going to, you implied this, I'm going to say it. There's also others-oriented conscientious laziness, which is a mouthful. But that's where you hate to see other people, and which you said this kind of, you hate to see other people doing unproductive tasks that could be automated or streamlined so that they had more time to do productive work, and you want to help them. So it's not just personal laziness. It's like,
Right.
Gosh, stop working so hard, and I think I can help you, right?
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, are we done? Is it to me? Is my second one and wrapping up this segment? Okay.
Yep.
Mine is sense of humor. Must have
100%.
sense of humor. And this is actually a cheat code for me to talk about several other things. So first of all, and let's do the qualifiers like we've always done. Yeah, is there terrible sense of humor where you're making fun of people and mocking them? I don't mean that. I mean positive sense of humor. People with a sense of humor, in my opinion, it's a cheat code they typically have a fast processor. They're pretty rapid thinkers, typically. To either get a joke or give a joke, you've got to be a little bit, right? Snappy, which we like in IT generally, because things are coming at us pretty fast. There's always an element of creativity to make a joke or to respond to someone. There's a little element of creativity. See, I'm jamming in all these other things under this umbrella of sense of humor. Not always. So let's put another qualifier. The problem with sense of humor is using it at the right time and place. Always. Don't use it in the wrong place, but knowing when it's the right place. So I'm qualifying that it's like a really good, healthy use of, but it's, I think, creative, fast processor people that think quickly and have, as the French would say, joie de vivre. I think we all know the French phrase. Yeah, joie de vivre. They got the joie de vivre, which kind of means zest for life, meaning they're generally positive. So I'm piling a lot in these three words, sense of humor, but I mean it in the most positives. But those are the people I like to work with. But it's because it also brings these little writer traits that I think come along with it quite a bit. What do you think?
Well, I love it, and I'm 100% behind, because actually it was listed on my list as my third next one, but I didn't have all the qualifiers, so I was struggling with how to put that one in there too, to say, yeah, put those things in there, because for me, that's kind of one of my things, right? As I love the sense of humor. Again, if you're on video, you can see my background, that I don't take life too seriously in certain aspects, and I always tell my wife that the quick wit is a sense of a strong mind, because they say that, and I don't think she believes me that it's like true or anything. But I try.
You're talking about yourself when
you
you say that, typically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
When I make those smarty comments or something, it's because I got a good mind or something. It's scientifically proven. I'm sure of it. But I really because when I was thinking of it too, it's like, don't take life too seriously, do all this, but there's a lot of people could take that negatively, right? But again, using it in the right space, doing those things. I actually have on my resume enlisted in my skills is humor. And there's a few reasons for that. One, it's because I actually want people to see that. And I would be okay if somebody questioned me on that, because I'd like to have that conversation with someone. And I'll be honest with you, if you question or have an issue with me having humor on my resume, you and I probably aren't going to get along to work well together. So
right.
It's a filter on there to say, if you question that or have any issues with that, then we maybe should just stop talking right now, because that's just where I like to be as well. Like, just, it is what it is. Sometimes you got to just have fun with it.
Yeah.
It's
Anything
great having
else?
those types of people on your team that can take a very difficult, stressful situation and break it up with humor and still offer, sound advice too. It's not just they're just like the funny guy. They also are intelligent and adding value to the conversation. So it's always great to have those people on your team.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think that makes your team and your work life better, right? If you have people that have a sense of humor, they're more fun to work with. Everyone's experience at work is better. I mean, so that makes everyone around them better and happier, I think.
Yeah. If you combine that with self-awareness, I think it also brings that thing I was talking about earlier about like knowing when is the time to lighten the mood and when it's time to not,
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just a class clown all the time, that's not good. But if you sprinkle it in the day, it just makes everything better. Great. Well, that's round 2. So, hey, listeners, we're gonna try to pull our favorite 5 or our Fab 5 or our final 5, which is almost close to the final 4. But we're gonna try to do that right after this short break and see if we can do it. Join us when we come back. Thanks. Okay, welcome back to the last IT podcast in the world, where we're talking with Tejal Patel, Keven, Pennock, Darrick Johnson, and myself, David Wheat, about the traits we really love in great IT staff, not the technical ones, but the other ones. And we've had a great time talking about, we came up with 8. We could have gone probably another hour and come up with 15 more, but we've got 8 in our list. And now we're going to kind of go lightning round with these rules. We're going to kind of pick our final 5. They're all good. We'd want all of these, but just for fun, what are our top 5? And here are the rules. We're going to go round robin, starting with Tejal, and they have to pick something from someone else's list. And then we'll go to me. That'll be 4. And then we've got to figure out how to pick our 5th together. So it should be fun. So I'm going to read these off for the listeners and all of you. And Tejal, you're going to go first. So the ones we had were Tejal said loves their job and has self-awareness. Keven said perseverance or tenacity and inquisitiveness. Darrick said grounded, but also innovative and conscientious laziness. And I said voracious reader and sense of humor. So Tejal, picking from someone else's list, what should make our final 5?
Inquisitiveness.
Inquisitiveness from Kevin's list. Excellent. Curiosity. Digging for more.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Good job. All right, Keven, over to you. What's your pick for our final 5?
I'm going to pull from your list because it was on my list too, but I'm going with the sense of humor because again, that's just one that I really feel like works well and helps people out. And I liked your qualifiers on it. Like I said, I was having a hard time with that, but I liked your qualifiers, and it pulls in so many other pieces. So that's what I'm going to take.
All right, Darrick, that means you can pick from perseverance, voracious reader, grounded but innovative. Oh, you can't pick from yours. Loves their job and self-awareness. What do you got?
Yeah, I think loves their job. That's a huge one.
Yep. Loves their job. So far we've got inquisitiveness, sense of humor, loves their job. Over to me. Gosh, these are all so good. Just because it was said in such a shockingly unique way, I'm going to go with conscientious laziness, that drive to automate things and save people time and energy so that we can do lazy things. We don't really mean lazy. And by the way, and we should have said this in that segment, it takes a lot of hard work to be conscientiously lazy.
Right.
You have to work to get there, right? So yeah, that one's mine. Okay. So that's our 4. Now collaboratively, we have to pick a 5th. I'm going to tell you what they are. And then we're going to let Keven go first this time. And we're just going to discuss it. So what's left is self-awareness, perseverance and tenacity, grounded, and voracious reader. Those are the 4 that's left. So someone nominate the 5th.
I like the self-awareness. It was one I hadn't thought of, but it's one that I really like, because again, when you think about it and you think about the people who you work with that aren't self-aware or you manage that aren't self-aware, it makes it pretty challenging to work with those folks.
All right. Self-aware. You want a challenger to self-aware? That would leave perseverance, grounded, voracious reader. Anyone got a counter? We can have a nice little debate on something. Or we're just going to cave to Kevin's.
I think that's a pretty good one, but I do like voracious reader. I think that affects a lot of things. Software is a very math heavy world, but it's amazing how much reading and verbal skills kind of impact it. Simple stuff, naming variables, right? Naming
var 1, var 2.
Yeah, writing readable code, writing documentation. So I know that's not exactly what you communicate there, but I think that verbal skills, reading is pretty important.
All right. Any other nominees? Or are we?
I'm going to go with reading. I'm going to second that one. I think to be successful in our space, you have to be a reader. Otherwise, you'll get left in the dust.
I'm going to second self-awareness. So now what?
Flip a coin.
In a completely self-unaware move, David adds to the logjam instead of removing the logjam by nominating. David made it a tie game. All right, now, okay, bake off, self-awareness or voracious reader. You're interviewing someone and you get a moment of clairvoyance, like you're interviewing a new candidate for IT and you have a miracle moment where you can read their thoughts and you discern that they are either very, very self-aware or a very, very voracious reader, but not both. What do you do?
I can teach them to read or make them read. I don't know that I can teach them to be self-aware.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's like
I like that.
It's like in the NBA. You can't coach height, right? You can't coach tall.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I think that's
envisioning,
the nail in the coffin. Go ahead, Darrick.
envisioning 2 candidates with your scenario, I think I'm the same. I take the self-aware individual every time.
Yeah, I think we have a winner. Tejal really, that's a great statement. Like, I don't care if you read slow, just keep reading, right? Like, yeah, please read this.
Right.
Don't go home till you read this. But self-awareness is baked in somewhere pretty early. Wouldn't we agree? Like, very hard to develop skill.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would agree with that.
All right, our final 5 is loves their job, inquisitive, keen sense of humor, conscientiously lazy, and self-aware. That'd be a pretty good anything in any role, but certainly in IT, those things are very, very great. In your career, if you look back on the people that have worked beside you or in your team, what percentage kind of check a lot of these boxes, would you say? Percentage of people you've worked with or that have worked for you?
I'd say it's a smaller percentage because I think a lot of people have 1 or 2 of them, but I think it's really hard to find someone that has all of those.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, I think there's some of it that's a little different in the areas you work in. And I think maybe Darrick would agree on this one, right? I'm a software developer, so hopefully nobody gets offended by this, but I think they're kind of that's a challenging area. I think people in that area, I've always referred to them as prima donnas, and you can edit that out if you want or whatever, but it's really hard to find sometimes those self-aware people. They are really, a lot of times they are the really intelligent people, but they want to sit by themselves and just do their thing. It's hard to interact with people. So you have to kind of figure that out, right? Sometimes on the more infrastructure side, I've seen more of that. There's sometimes those inquisitive people, right? You need them over there a little bit more so that they can dive in and solve all those problems when the network's not working, or is it which piece of equipment is it not working? But, I think it's really hard to find someone who has all of those pieces.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, each kind of sub area has their own quirks that make those harder to get all of them. I mean, I would say to even check like 4 of those 5 is probably less than a quarter of people you end up working with.
For sure.
Right.
What about you, Tejal? Are you a great
there's
hire?
probably
You're batting like 80%.
No, there's probably a handful of people that I've ever worked with that have all of those qualities. It's very difficult to find. It's difficult to assess in an interview process too, if somebody has those skills sometimes. So very hard.
I mean, and to be fair, if you just think of your extended family, even your extended family is hard to find, people who have,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Hopefully none of your extended family listen to the podcast, but I said it, not you, but if you just think about humanity, like it's rare to find those things. And so you retain them and you do the things you can when you find them, because they're so rare, but they make such a difference in the team. Wouldn't you agree? Like they make everything around them better. It's a magnifying effect, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just as a toxic employee impacts other people, so does a great person.
Those are the people that you want to take with you, David. I know you've done this a lot. You take them with you from job to job, right? Because they are so wonderful to work with.
Right. Exactly right. That's a really good point. Awesome. Well, we normally say, what did you learn on the podcast? But with a panel, I'm going to say I learned first job was McDonald's, 2 weeks, dishwasher at a Mexican restaurant, many years, and IT help desk guy at his college. So he's instantly labeled as a nerd. Probably impacted his dating life. I don't know. Yep. Probably not. He did fine. He's got a fine. He has ended up with a fine personal image consultant.
Worked out really good.
Worked out really good. Maybe fixed her computer. I don't know. And library aide at the United States Air Force Academy Library, which kind of sounds pretty cool. Awesome. Well, thank you all for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed it, and hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. That was fun.